Hello, everybody. My name is Steven Snyder, and I'm going to be explaining why the U.S. should reconsider military support for Ukraine. I want to start by explaining what motivated me to take this stance. Recently, the wildfires in Los Angeles have exposed just how unprepared our own country is when it comes to handling domestic crises. We've seen people lose everything. Many of these families are relying on crowdfunding just to survive. We've seen public figures, for example, one of my favorite DJs, Clooney, who's had to step in using their own platforms to raise money because our own system wasn't equipped to fully support those in need. He was taking money out of his own pockets and donating it to fire departments and directly to families, as well as contributing sales from his record labels and merchandise directly to the families and fire departments. When I saw that, it made me think, if we can't even take care of Americans suffering from natural disaster, how can we justify sending billions overseas to fund a war with no clear end in sight? As of January 2025, the US has sent over $113 billion in aid to Ukraine, with a massive portion of that being allocated to military support. But at what cost? Right now, we're dealing with skyrocketing national debt, inflation that continues to hit American families hard, and a housing crisis leaving millions struggling to afford places to live. Emergency services are underfunded. Our own veterans aren't receiving the care they deserve, and our basic infrastructure in many parts of the country is falling apart. This isn't just about Ukraine, it's about priorities, and right now our priorities are not where they should be. Beyond the financial burden, there's also a bigger question. Is our support even making a difference? Despite nearly 2 years of military aid, Ukraine is still locked in a brutal, grinding war, and there's no decisive victory in sight. In fact, recent reports suggest that conflict has reached a stalemate and neither side is making significant gains. If the billions we've already sent haven't led to a clear resolution, what makes anyone think that sending even more money will change that outcome? The truth is, continued US involvement isn't bringing Ukraine closer to victory. I believe it's just prolonging the war and the suffering of the people caught in it. And let's not ignore the geopolitical risk of our involvement. By continuing to send military aid, we are actively escalating tensions with Russia, pushing the world closer to a larger conflict. It's easier to say that this is just about supporting an ally, but history has shown us that when the US gets involved in a prolonged conflict, it rarely stays just military aid. How much longer until we're sending US troops? How much longer until this turns into a direct confrontation between two nuclear powers? These are all real risks, and I do not think they should be taken lightly. Now, some will argue that pulling back military support for Ukraine would mean abandoning an ally. But what does that really mean? The US can and should continue supporting Ukraine diplomatically and through humanitarian efforts. We can assist in negotiations, offer economic aid, and provide resources for rebuilding once the war ends. But sending endless military funding when we're not even sure the end goal is what I believe to be irresponsible. Even US officials are starting to recognize this. The recent pause in foreign aid announced by the State Department is a sign that cracks are beginning to form in this policy. Instead of blindly sending billions more, we need to take a step back and reassess our role. Why are we carrying the bulk of a financial burden when European nations who have more at stake are contributing far less? Why does the US have to be the world's ATM for war while our own people suffer? At the end of the day, we have limited resources. Every dollar we send abroad is not a dollar spent at home on disaster relief, infrastructure, healthcare, education, or even taking care of our own veterans. If we can't provide proper emergency response, efforts for Americans losing their homes to fires, floods, and hurricanes, then how can we justify spending millions of dollars on foreign wars? Thank you.